Today's story is about an artist who rarely gets mentioned outside specialist art circles, yet his work quietly reshaped how modern sculpture understands the human body. His name is Wilhelm Lehmbruck. If you stand in front of his figures, the first impression is not beauty in the traditional sense. It is weight, emotional weight. His sculptures do not celebrate the body as heroic or ideal. Instead, they feel like the body is carrying something invisible: grief, exhaustion, reflection, even silence itself. Lehmbruck was born in 1881 in Germany, into a working-class family. Unlike many artists who came from academic privilege, his path into art was shaped by discipline and observation rather than comfort. He trained at the Düsseldorf Academy of Arts, where he initially focused on drawing and realistic representation. But very early on, he became less interested in copying the surface of the body and more interested in what the body reveals about the inner life of a person. That shift became the foundation of his entire artistic language. When Lehmbruck turned fully to sculpture, he began creating elongated human forms, especially nude figures, that seem stretched not just physically, but emotionally. The bodies are often tall, thin, and slightly bent forward, as if pulled downward by invisible forces. The nudity is not presented as sensual or decorative. It is stripped of theatricality. What remains is vulnerability. One of the most striking aspects of his work is how still it is. There is no action scene, no mythological drama, no storytelling moment frozen in time. Instead, there is endurance. A standing figure becomes an act of survival. A seated figure becomes a form of withdrawal. A kneeling figure feels like emotional collapse made visible in bronze or stone. Lehmbruck lived during a period of intense historical pressure. He experienced World War I, and like many artists of his generation, he was deeply affected by it. But instead of responding with overt political imagery or literal depictions of war, he turned inward. His sculptures became more minimal, more abstracted, and more psychologically intense. After the war, his work took on an even deeper sense of isolation. The human body in his sculptures no longer feels anchored to a stable world. It feels suspended between presence and disappearance. The nude figure, in this context, is not about exposure. It is about stripping away everything unnecessary until only emotional structure remains. This is where Lehmbruck becomes especially important in the history of modern art. While other sculptors were moving toward either classical revival or geometric abstraction, he was doing something quieter and more difficult, turning the human figure into a psychological landscape. His figures often have elongated limbs and narrow torsos, not because he wanted anatomical accuracy, but because he was searching for emotional proportion rather than physical proportion. A longer body could express longing. A bent spine could express burden. A lowered head could express internal retreat. In his work, the body is not just seen, it is read. Unlike many nude sculptures from earlier traditions, there is very little sense of exhibitionism in his work. The viewer is not positioned as a spectator of beauty. Instead, the viewer becomes a witness to solitude. That difference changes everything. It removes the comfort of admiration and replaces it with quiet empathy. Lehmbruck's later years were marked by increasing psychological strain. He struggled with depression, and in 1919, he died by suicide in Berlin. That fact often overshadows his work, but it also deepens the emotional resonance of what he left behind. His sculptures do not feel like they were made to impress an audience. They feel like they were made to survive inner experience. Today, when we look at his nudes, they can feel surprisingly modern. In an age where the human body is constantly displayed, edited, and optimized, Lehmbruck's figures resist performance. They are not curated bodies. They are not ideal bodies. They are simply human presence, reduced to its most essential form. There is something almost uncomfortable in that honesty. But there is also a strange calmness. Because when everything unnecessary is removed, what remains is a kind of quiet truth. That the body carries not just form, but feeling. And perhaps that is why Lehmbruck's work still matters. It does not ask to be admired quickly. It asks to be felt slowly. It does not speak loudly. It stays in silence long after you have looked away. In the end, his nude figures are not about exposure at all. They are about what it means to exist inside a fragile human form, and to keep standing, even when the weight is high.